Okay.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to another webinar organized by the Plugin Program, which is a joint initiative by the Department of Science and Technology, Intel India, and SINE IIT Bombay. In this particular session, we have Mr. Subhinder Khurana, and the topic that we'll be delving in today is a workshop on storytelling with a focus on sales storytelling. Let me start by introducing Mr. Subhinder Khurana. Subhinder helps technology companies, including a big four, several deep tech startups and global software companies with the biggest challenge, that is to engage their audience, simplify complex concepts and inspire action. His 25-year global track record included VP Analytics at Cognizant, President of Market RX India, which was acquired by Cognizant, and founder of Easy Power Systems, now a part of Oracle. He's a venture partner at Omnivore, a 950 crore specialist agri-tech venture fund. He also serves on the NASSCOM Product Council and is the founder and lead mentor of the NASSCOM Deep Tech Club. He has a BTech from IIT Delhi. Welcome, Subhinder.
Thank you and welcome everyone.
Subhinder is also a coach at the Plugin Program, and he actively mentors and coaches our startups. We have 11 startups who are part of the Plugin Edition 3 cohort. They're also attending this webinar. So Subhinder, I'll let you to start off the proceedings for today with your presentation and the workshop. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Rakesh. Okay, so the topic for today is storytelling, right? And it's something we hear about a lot, right? And as you can see with the quote that I have up here, several very successful people have talked about storytelling. But you know, the two most common questions that I get, and incidentally, I used to have this question when I got started with storytelling, and as you can tell, I'm a techie. I've been a techie throughout my career, and I got into this fairly recently. The two questions that I get most is, A, what the hell is this? B, does it apply to me? You know, I'm all about technology, I'm all about enterprise sales, which is a very logical, very data-driven space. You know, does this, you know, this may work very well if you're trying to sell soap, but does it really apply to me? And, you know, does it matter, especially when it's deep tech? Okay, and you know what I'll do is I'll let Vinod Khosla answer that. And for anybody who doesn't know Vinod Khosla, you know, just Google him. He's one of the most successful entrepreneurs and venture capitalists, and one of the I would say the biggest techies in the world. Okay, so just hear with what Vinod has to say.
Act of doing something large. Love that. Probably the thing that entrepreneurs miss the most is after you have the facts on your side, it's not good enough. You have to do storytelling.
Okay. Words of wisdom. Now let me unpack that statement for you. He really said three things in this. First is, this is the thing that entrepreneurs probably miss the most, right? And I sure as hell did. Second thing he says is, after you have the facts on your side. So nothing I'm going to talk about today will help you get away with weak facts. And you know, facts means weak product, you know, weak understanding of the customer, weak value proposition. No, you have to have all those things figured out. Okay, but even after you've done that, so this is the third thing he says, you have to do storytelling. Okay, so it's not enough to have the facts on your side. It's essential, but not sufficient. Okay, so
act of doing something large.
And let me just again go a little deeper into why is it true for deep tech? And I would argue that it's actually more true for deep tech because our world is more complex. You know, most of us have faced this problem. You're standing in front of a customer or anybody else for that matter. They can't even understand what you do. They can't even understand what your product is all about, right? How can they get convinced about it? How can they buy if they don't understand? And if you have to deal with complexity, you need storytelling. Okay? So if you're selling deep tech, not only do you have the normal problems that everybody selling has, which is convincing your prospects, inspiring your prospects, you also have to deal with complexity. So you have a bigger challenge than most. Now, I'll just give an example of complexity at work, right? And I've taken a statement, you can read it. It's taken verbatim. I've taken a copy paste from a white paper on big data, which, and it's about a data set used to train ML models. Okay, so this statement is factually correct, it's complete, it's accurate. Okay, but is it clear? Is it compelling? Is it insightful? Is it clear? I mean, I had to read it like 4 times, and I think I'm a fairly smart guy, but I had to read it about 4 times to even figure out what it meant, right? Is it compelling? Does it evoke any kind of an emotional reaction? Is it insightful? Would I even remember this, right? I mean, I have trouble reading it. How can I recite it later? Okay, so one of the things we'll cover today is how do you take statements like these, which we deal with in the deep tech world on a daily basis, and how do you make them clear, compelling, insightful? Okay? Because we have to deal with complexity on a daily basis. Okay? Our challenges are also deeper because, of course, we all face this the challenge of attention span, complexity like I talked about, and conflicting priorities. Our customers have conflicting priorities. How do we make sure that our product is in their priority list? Because if it's not, it's always going to be in limbo, right? They will keep evaluating but never buy. Okay, and this is where stories come in. So the whole point of stories is you need to engage your audience, you need to clarify concepts, and you need to inspire action. Right? Those are the 3 pillars of storytelling. And I'll just repeat. That's, if I was to say, demystify storytelling, what is it for? Engage your audience, clarify complex concepts, inspire action. That's it. Okay. We will cover in today's session is really, we're all techies over here, right? Whenever we want to understand something, we want to understand the underlying technology. We want to understand the architecture. We want to understand design patterns. We want to understand the tech stack. That's what we will understand for storytelling. Okay, let's dive in. What are the essential elements of a story? Okay, and this is really the architecture of a story. Now, let me just show you what a story looks like. Okay, and this is based on a lot of work, based on a lot of research, but this is something I've gathered from some very smart people who figured this out, decoded what stories look like. I've just put them in a structure which techies like you and me can understand. Okay, now, but let me not just tell you what this is. Let me show you this. Okay, so we'll take a normal story that we're all used to, and I've picked a fairy tale we've all heard, the Cinderella story. How does it work? And let's see if it works with this kind of a story structure. And now you might say, why are we talking about fairy tales? This is a workshop for deep tech products. Trust me, we'll connect it up. It will make a lot of sense in a little bit. Okay, well, let's see how the Cinderella story works in this. So how does it start out? It starts out with, there was this beautiful girl, right? And her mother dies. So there's that oh shit moment. Her father remarries and she thinks, hey, maybe I have a new mother. But her new mother, the stepmother, is evil. and she has evil stepsisters. Okay, and you can see the emotions are going down. Next, she becomes a servant of the family. Okay? But that's not the end of it. There is a ball, there's a party, everybody is invited, but she's not. She's not allowed to go, she's at home. So everybody goes, right? Everybody's at the party. She's home all alone. She's got nothing. She's got nothing to look forward to, no possessions, nothing. All is lost. What happens at that point? Fairy godmother shows up. Okay, now digressing. In our stories, who is fairy godmother? Fairy godmother is us, right? Because the hero of the story is Cinderella. The customer is Cinderella. You have to come in to help out the hero, right, with your products. So the savior, which is fairy godmother, comes with a magic wand. Similarly, you show up with your products, your technology. And what does fairy godmother do? She says, oh, you need to go to the ball. You will need a chariot. Bring a pumpkin. You will need horses. Bring a rat. You'll need a great dress. Here, I'll change your rags into a dress. Okay, and off you go. And here's some slippers, right? But be back by midnight. So things are looking up for her, right? She's going up the curve. And as she enters, she goes to the ball. As she enters the party, everybody's looking at her. Okay? She's the center of attention. The prince starts to dance with her. And the prince falls in love, right? Things are great. She's hit a peak. And at that point, what happens? The clock strikes 12. And suddenly the whole world comes crashing down, right? She's running away. And she's back where she was. But, things are a lot better than before, right? Because she has a memory and she has some hope. But, she's back where she was. And then we know the rest. The prince finds her, the slipper fits, and is happily ever after. Okay. Now, the same story structure works for even a common movie. I mean, if you look at, how, let's say you pick a romantic comedy and it fits the same structure, or you pick a spy thriller, you pick, even a stupid misogynistic movie like a James Bond movie, and you'll see it fits the same structure. It starts out with, let's say a Bond movie, it starts out with an action sequence, and, no matter what you're doing, you just get drawn in. He's jumping out of a plane, he's blowing stuff up. And it may not even have any relevance to the final plot, but you get a solid minute to 2 minutes of action even before the numbering starts, right? And then the movie starts, and about a couple of minutes into the movie, he's walking into M's office. There is a villain who's got a plot to take over the world. It's that oh shit moment, right? And off he goes. He's got a mission, off he goes. And within the first few minutes, he's killing a few villains, he's smashing his way into things. There's a tease, but then he starts to lose, right? He starts to get beaten up. Maybe the girl gets captured, then he gets captured. And then about 25 minutes into the movie, we see he's strapped to some board. A shark is going to eat him up, or a saw is going to cut him in half. World's going to end. All is lost, right? He's going to die. Everybody else, the villain will win. And then what shows up? Just at that moment when he's about to die, he pulls some fancy gadget out of his pocket, right? The savior shows up with the gifts. He's got some deep technology gadget that you've given him. And he pulls that out and he saves his life at the last minute. Then he rescues the girl and off they go, right? Some more killing and blowing, and right, they're out, and there's a high. But all is not won yet, because the villain is still there. That plot still exists. So he has to go back in, right? And again, things start to look bad because, hey, time is running out, and we all know the plot. just as there's 7 seconds left on the clock, right? Again, the fortunes will change, and then of course there's that happily ever after. Now, the interesting thing in all of this is we know this is what's going to happen. You start a Bond movie and you know that he's not going to lose. Okay, you know that he's going to end up with this happily ever after situation. But does it still not feel thrilling? Do you still not get drawn in? Do you still not enjoy all that tension? Now, what if he was, just about 10 minutes into the movie, he gets in and he says, oh, you know what, Mr. Villain, I've got these great tools. I'm going to beat you, right? It's happily ever after. Would you ever watch that movie? But isn't that the movie we are showing our customers every day when they want to see this kind of a movie? Anyway, we'll come to that. But let's see how this kind of a movie actually plays out in real life. Okay, so again, I'm going to show a story from, this one is from Salesforce, and you will see it actually follows the same plot as a James Bond movie or as a Cinderella story. Okay, and just one kind of a editorial point over here. I'm going to show a lot of videos in this, but that's not to say that videos is the only way this works. Videos is a very powerful medium, but we will see the story structure work out in decks. In fact, we will build a deck with the same story plot. We will build a deck which will feel like a James Bond movie to your client. Okay? You will build your deck in today's session, right? Before we get there, though, we have to understand what that structure is. And videos are the best way for me to show it because it's so simple. So watch and enjoy.
The most exciting thing about retail today is the creativity you get to have in thinking about how to connect the digital and the physical worlds. And what's that exciting place where it's seamless? The customer is the customer. They don't care if they're shopping in a store or the web or calling you on the phone. They are the same person. And it's really important that you know that.
We're all about helping consumers create a space that is enjoyable as a reflection of who they are.
And we're doing that through the idea that the customer wants to feel like we know them all the way through the process.
I mean, you got 30,000 people on your site at any given time, and you got 30,000 different reasons why they're there. So how can we take all these visitors and make it relevant down to that one customer?
We want to help create the perfect home for you. And that's different than the perfect home for someone else.
We're not about being the biggest, but we want to be the best.
The Salesforce Marketing Cloud has allowed us to take that connection you have in a brick and mortar store and apply it to a digital world, and that's just the magic. It's super fun to do.
Every Monday morning, it's predicting what we should deliver to our consumer based on their behavior.
All of the email programs are sent out by the Marketing Cloud without us ever thinking about it.
That's the beautiful thing about Salesforce. We're no longer saying, hey, I'll create a list, I'm going to send it to these people. We're letting the data decide that for us.
Our entire database of customers and their purchasing decisions are being funneled into that. It's effortless.
Not only that, the predictive intelligence that we're doing with our product recommendations, it's like our silent design associate.
Tailoring our communications and our abilities to reach out to you based on what you're doing at that moment.
Then that customer moves from our website to our store, and it's a shared experience. And that information is being used for the next customer that's browsing those similar items.
So we're getting a holistic view of the customers who bought that sofa and what they bought with it, which is why the recommendations are so good.
We're actually introducing items to the customer they didn't even think they needed. And every day, that machine learning is getting smarter. Every day, we're delighting our customer.
It's given us more opportunities and more ways to enhance and deepen the relationship with those customers in a very personal way. The impact of the Salesforce Marketing Cloud has been a higher average order value.
It's 40% higher in the web. It's 60% higher in the store.
The first day, people were buying things direct and we're like, what? They're doing that?
They're walking in the store already anticipating that they're going to buy that sofa and that lamp. So they're really completing that space.
The data just keeps getting better and better, and the results just keep getting better and better.
Our conversions are up like 600%.
The numbers don't lie. It's a marketing tool we can't do without.
It's almost unbelievable.
The success is doing this.
Our ROI is pushing 2,800%. 2,800%. I mean, that's phenomenal.
It just works. It just works.
We wouldn't be able to do any of that unless we had the Salesforce Marketing Cloud in place.
Although we want to monetize and have ROI, the more important piece to us is our customers are getting the best possible information. We know you do the right thing, the sales come.
Okay, so you notice that the story works, right? It's a really powerfully delivered message. But more importantly, it followed the same structure. And you might have noticed the annotations I put at the bottom. It tells you the same plot points showing up in the story as they had in the, in the curve you saw, or in the, in the other stories, the Cinderella story and the Bond story. Now, notice that they did not start out by saying, oh, we are Salesforce, this is such a great technology product. We have got so many customers, so on and so forth. It started with the customer, the hero. It started with what issues they were facing, right? And then introduced Salesforce as the magical power that would help them overcome their challenges, right? That's what you need to do with your products. And I'll show you how to do that, okay? But again, before we do that, let's look at something else. And this is something I really enjoy. So how do we do our normal sales pitches? And like I said, later on, we will actually work through a pitch, and you can work on your pitch in parallel. We'll see a real pitch from a company which is doing very well. It's a great company doing well. How is their pitch structured, you will see, and how most of us do our pitches, right? So if we were to take the Cinderella story and deliver it like a normal business pitch, what would it look like? Okay. Now, how do we start our pitches, right? We start by saying, hey, we are so-and-so, right? And in the Cinderella story, who are we? We're Fairy Godmother. How would the story start? I am Fairy Godmother. Okay. We need to talk about our history. We need to say, we've done so much work. We've won so many awards, but not enough. I really want to impress the customer, right? So we will bring some more testimonials up front. Now let's get to the customer's problem. Here's a customer, here's a problem. Cinderella was tortured and lonely. Okay? And we'll amplify the problem. She had no clothes, she had no shoes, she had no chariot to go to the party. So, my solution. The product I bring in, my wand, solves the problem for Cinderella. What does it do? Let's list out all the features. It turns pumpkins to chariots, rats to horses. Okay? It even has some really deep tech features. You get slippers with, I used to say PGP, it's blockchain nowadays. And of course, there's a beautiful benefit. And my product in the next version will be even better. It'll work beyond midnight. Okay. Now, this sort of looks like, if you notice, this looks like how I used to pitch, and I have seen most of you pitch nowadays, like the pitch we will see later also. But this also looks like the Watson story we saw earlier, right? Hi, I'm Watson, right? We put in so much research into this. We can really help our customers. We're creating this great, beautiful world. No, you need to flip that around. You need to tell the story with Cinderella as the hero, not Watson as the hero. Okay? How we do that, we'll get to in a minute. So what do storytellers do differently? there's normal business pitches and there are story pitches. And what's different? And I say, what do the ordinary pitches do? Ordinary pitches show that you have a great product, how it'll help your customers, and try to make it a priority for your customer. They try to fight for the priority list of the customer. They try to tell the customer, hey, my product is so good, it can help you so much. You need to make it a priority for yourself. Okay? What do great products do? What do great storytellers do? They say, no, I'm not going to talk about my product. I'm going to talk about the customer. I'm going to talk about, hey, Mr. Hero, you have certain goals. You have certain challenges in the way of your quest. My product is going to become your magical superpower to help you reach your goals. Right? That's what great storytellers do. Looks slightly different, right? But that's not all. There is an awesome story level also. Okay? And we will see a bit of that today also. Okay? So awesome storytellers simplify, inspire, transform. They don't stop at just, making the product, or making the customer the hero and the product their superpower. They actually simplify, inspire, and transform. And what today's workshop, we will focus on how to go from good to great. Okay, we will get a glimpse of the awesome, but that's a whole subject in itself. But the good to great, the good news is you can go in a structured way. You can do it yourself for your own stories. Isn't that amazing? And what you will find is that with a great story, you will already be better than 80-90% of the storytellers out there. Your pitch will be better than 80 to 90% of the pitches that are out there. Okay? And that takes about 5 to 10% of the effort of what it takes to create an awesome pitch. So that's my promise today to you. Okay, and what I want to show again is, let's look at what an awesome story looks like.
I think Carrefour is a pretty unique company. The logo of our brand looks at the past, builds on the roots to look at the future. We have a huge transformation program underway to really bring innovation to the food industry. We want to differentiate, we want to go fast enough and make sure that what we do is better for the planet, the way we produce, the way we distribute. But our main focus is really to make sure that we make good food accessible to all and through all distribution channels. The depth of the change that is underway is such that it's going to take a whole company to make that change possible. In the partnership we have developed with Google, we're able to bring innovation at scale. We have rolled out G Suite across 140,000 employees. We're really trying to inject innovation, agility, extra collaboration, and we are very proud of the speed with which we are driving change. We have migrated to the cloud 180 applications in 2019, which is a lot. We are developing algorithms that prevent shelf out in our stores. Thanks to Google Cloud Platform technology, we are redefining the ways of doing shopping, developing a truly omni-channel value proposition for our customers. And across the continents, there is value creation in our core business. En français, Carrefour means a crossroads. And I really believe that we're at the crossroads of so many changes in the food industry. We're extremely proud to have Google as a partner, trying to really build on our DNA to empower Carrefour to achieve its ambition.
Guys, did you feel that emotion, that inspiration? And we're talking about grocery shopping, right? Compare that to melanoma. And if you can get a much larger emotional reaction with something as mundane, as simple as grocery shopping, imagine what your products can do. Right? And what was the difference here? Again, you saw that this was talking, we didn't get into those features. We didn't say, oh, it gives you these amazing dashboards. It makes you more efficient. It gives you, you can integrate with the click of a button. It's not talking about features at all. At the same time, it's not shying away from technical language. I mean, we covered a lot of the same language that we use in our pitches on a regular basis. So it's not about the content at all. Okay, in fact, in today's session, we'll talk about this and we'll say, first, you've got to have your content ready, then you restructure it to tell a story. So I'm not going to I'm not going to say tone down your technical content at all. In fact, your technology has to speak for yourself, or in fact, as Vinod Khosla said, you have to have the facts on your side. Okay? But then you have to do storytelling. Okay? It's not enough to just have the facts on your side. So this is what amazing stories look like. Awesome stories look like. I'm just going to give another example of another story that we just built. This is for Omnivore. This is a venture fund that I work with, which is purely focused on agrotech. And this is again a story we just recently built. In fact, we're launching the report today as we speak. We've done a Vision 2030 report, and this is the launch video for that report. Again, watch. I just want to show that you can systematically build these awesome stories.
Make agriculture more sustainable and eco-friendly. Entrepreneurs create wealth, valuable new solutions. But some entrepreneurs are driven to do more. They want to change the lives of poor farmers, make agriculture more sustainable and eco-friendly, improve nutrition, quality, and availability of our food. Agritech ventures may be the most important investment for mankind, but they have not been lucrative. However, a big change is coming. We look to what technologies will shape agriculture over the next decade, and the findings are surprising, even downright shocking. A lot can change in 10 years. Look at what happened to mobile since 2010. Entrepreneurs in innovation with the support of smart capital can overcome challenges and create magic. Why must we choose between impact and wealth? Why not both? However, there is a dark cloud. Climate change threatens our food supply. So, what future will we create? It's a race against time. Global warming could unleash pathogens or create fast, intractable deserts. Or we could create a bountiful, sustainable future where agriculture reverse carbon trends, and we promote both biodiversity and food diversity. But this needs deep expertise, passion, and sustained focus on farmers. All of us, policymakers, entrepreneurs, consumers, have to drive change. Omnivore continues to support entrepreneurs working to realize this future. So, what future will mankind create?
Okay, so I just wanted to give a glimpse of what awesome stories look like, and like I said, these things, there is a lot of science to it, which I'm sharing with you. But today's focus is on good to great. Okay, so with that, now you have some understanding, or at least you have a glimpse of what is the architecture of a story. Okay, it has these certain steps that you go through. What we will do now is go through an exercise where we will actually build a story with your pitch deck. Okay? And what you should have done to do this is There is a template that was shared with all of you, a one-page questionnaire. You should have filled in that question, or at least answered those questions for your own pitch. You should have also built your own sales pitch, the way you normally do it. You already have a sales deck and you filled in this question. Out of that, the set of questions, I've highlighted a few over here. There's about 10 questions that I've highlighted, and we're going to cull those out. Okay, so all the answers are important because they help you understand capture the essential information, understand the context, and have all the background information as you're building the final story. But these 10 questions kind of form the different pillars of the story, or the different, it's almost like a paint by numbers. Okay, so what I've done is taken these same 10 questions. So for example, if you notice, the first one I've highlighted is, how would they define themselves in one phrase? That is the first question in this list, right? The third question is, did something happen, an incident or a trend or a change? Well, the third question is, did something happen, right? So you should have taken these 10 questions and their answers. Okay, and what we will do is map those on the story arc I showed you earlier, right? So, but let's make sure that everybody's on the same page over here. You should, just pull out the template that you received. I hope some of you, at least, whoever's done those questions, you will benefit a lot more from this workshop. Pull out your answers for those questions. Pull out your sales deck, right? Have those ready. What I will do is I'll walk through the answers that were provided by Vakas, and then we will show how we built the story for Vakas using those the deck and those answers. Okay, and like I said, this is a paint by numbers. Okay, so as you saw earlier, the essential elements of a story arc. Okay, now what I've done is mapped those 10 questions on the same arc. Okay, so it's the same 10 questions, right? The one and or the three goes into the setup. That's how you get started. That should be your first slide. The quest, which is number 2, should be your second slide. The challenges, number 5, should be your third slide. Okay, downside risk, or number 4, should be your fourth slide, and so on and so forth. Okay, and like I said, we will do this. So if you want to take notes, please feel free, but we'll actually go through all this. Okay, and what I have here is the 10 questions as answered by Vakas. Okay, so what I'll do is, let me just, Rakesh, should we take a couple of minute break at this stage, or should we continue and take a break a little later?
Up to you, Subhinder. Yeah, we could continue if it is fine. Otherwise, we can take a break.
Okay, so what we'll do is, let me just do this. I'll quickly answer a couple of the questions we've received. If they make sense, or if the question will come later, I'll defer that. But we'll take a quick break. We'll come back and restart on this in 3 minutes. Okay, so 2 questions. In a B2B scenario, who's the hero of the story? Well, the hero of the story is the customer. And okay, so this is a really good question. If you're pitching to a corporate customer, a B2B, who is the hero of the story? And there are really, okay, so there are 3 options you have. In most cases, it's going to be the decision maker on the customer side. Okay, sometimes that's not clear who that is, or there are multiple stakeholders involved. Okay, and there may be multiple stakeholders who all have different objectives. So you could have, for example, an operations person who's more concerned about operational efficiency, or the adoption issues, and there may be a marketing or a customer experience person, a product manager who's more concerned about how some of the functionality. In those cases, I would either make their customer the hero of the story. That's the unifying thread, right? Everybody in your client organization is working for a common customer on the who is their customer, right? Make that customer the hero of the story, and that unifies everyone. Or you can make the CEO or the CXO, who is kind of the key stakeholder on the client side, the hero of the story. Okay, if there are process or underlying theme, I'm not even sure what that means. It's really about empowerment. So there are different ways. I mean, it's really what your proposition is. Is it about risk? Is it about empowerment? So whatever is the theme, whatever is your value proposition, is the proposition you have to make as the underlying theme for your story. Then it says, in comparison to the last ad you showed, does using animation restrict the emotional aspect? No, in fact, animations are great. In fact, like I showed, animations can be a great way to depict emotions. But you don't even need video. I mean, your pitch deck itself can have a lot of emotions. Your emails, your text emails can have a lot of emotion. So nothing here which can be, which is limited to whatchamacallit. So nothing is limited to videos over here, right? Whether live or animated. So let's just break for a couple of minutes. 10:50 sharp, we will restart. Thank you. Okay, we're starting. I have my cup of coffee. Okay, so we're looking at the Varkas deck, and this is the before deck, right? And two comments. The company's, great product, great company. And what you will notice is, it's a pretty good deck, and it's probably what most decks look like, right? So it starts out. How does it start out? Varkas is all about accurate accountability, people and assets, about the company. Sort of sounds like, hi, I'm Fairy Godmother, right? We'll need to fix that. Okay, so about Varkas, here are the current problems, right? Cinderella is lonely and tortured. Here's our solution. Here's my wand, right? Here's what my wand looks like, what all it can do, right? And more about the product, right? My wand is really, really powerful. What all it can do for you: attendance management, location tracking, access management, right? It can turn rats to horses, pumpkins to chariots, right? Some more. Here are the benefits, right? Cinderella is able to attend the ball. She gets the prince, right? Then a little bit more about my credibility, of course. Thank you. Now, very interesting, right? So you'll notice that when I did the reverse Cinderella pitch, it's almost exactly the way this thing works, right? So one thing you should, I just want to take back a step back and do a bit of a, be a bit of a check on where we are and what we've seen so far. We've seen that stories have a structure. There's an architecture to stories. What we've seen is that those same elements can be applied to business pitches. We've seen how that works in some business stories. Right? We've also seen that you can take a story and tell it like a business pitch. And when you do that, it sounds really funny, or it sounds really boring. And we've seen that most business pitches by good companies follow that same structure, right? And I've shown some, and it's not limited to a few. I've shown something by IBM. Microsoft, Accenture. Some great companies have the same issue. We see that again and again, right? We've also seen that you can systematically change these structure, apply the story structure and systematically make them into great stories, which create an emotional impact. We've seen what those good stories look like. And now what we're going to do is take the pitch you just saw, make that into a great story, right? And what I want you to do is follow the process, apply it to your own pitch, right? So I'm going to switch from here, and let me go back to looking at the template. Okay. So I'm going to share the same thing again. Okay, so the 10 questions, right? And guys, please have the template that was mailed to you handy, because that will help you follow along. And here are the 10 questions, and here are the 10 answers that were provided for workers. So these are from the entrepreneur, from Pratik. Okay, let me just go through and let's make sure you understand what that question is and how that answer works. So first is, how would they define, and they in this context is your target client. How would they define themselves? Okay, and in Vakas's case, they are really going after somebody who is responsible for security and administration of the premises for a particular. So look at what the product is. The product is helping track location of people and assets inside an environment. So in a factory floor, you could have some critical assets. In an office, you could have people moving around, and especially in a COVID situation, this becomes a really big problem, because you want to make sure you know who all is in your premise. You want to make sure that you want to be able to do contact tracing, and you also want to make sure that if there's visitors, they stay within areas which are which they're authorized to visit. They don't go straying outside. If they do, you want to be able to track them. You want to know historically where they've been, right? So it's for that particular audience, and the way they would define themselves, knowledgeable and responsible. And my point is, you should always say, give them an aspirational quality. Make your customer, your customer is a hero in this, right? Make them a good person. Make them a responsible person. So they should always be well-meaning. They should always be up to date. They should always be looking to do the best for their organization. Okay, trying new technologies, so they're open-minded, they're innovative, they're on top of the job. You could almost copy-paste this answer if you don't have a better answer, right? But the good news is that if you add more detail, or you make it something, make something more specific, your stories will become better. Remember, the idea is you want to make the hero relatable, which means your audience should look at the hero and say, yeah, that's me, right? So if you describe your hero as somebody that the audience believes they are like, you will get a more powerful connection, right? So I hope that that explains how you define them. And at the end of this, I'll take some questions to clarify if there's any doubts left. Second is, what is their quest, right? Now, in a story, a hero always needs a goal. They need a quest, right? So if you go back to James Bond, Bond has a quest. He needs to defeat the villain and save the world, right? Cinderella had a quest. Cinderella wants to find hope, find love, right? Have something, in her life which she was missing out on. So there is always a quest, a goal, and aspiration, and your product. I mean, the goal should not be, oh, I want to acquire this particular product. No, that's very self-serving. Their goal has to be independent of your product. Remember, you're not trying to make your product the priority for them. You're trying to take their existing priority and fit your product to them, right? So first thing is, you got to map their priority. And if one common mistake I see is people say, okay, I want to make my product their aspiration, or the benefit of my product their aspiration. The point is, if that is not exactly what their quest is to begin with, the story will fall flat. It'll not connect, right? You can't change reality. So here, be honest. Understand what their goal and their aspiration is. And if it means you have to go change or redefine your product, so be it. That's better than you trying to force fit your product in a situation. Okay. The third point is, did something happen to create this need or desire? Now, usually there is always a trigger to a purchase, and the best products are very timely. So sometimes, some products are, some needs are forever, and so this may not have happened, but in most cases, you will find that there is a driving trend. This could be a technology trend. So for example, there is a new technology which is changing the way they work, and therefore they now need a new capability. They could be a demographic trend. So, customers are more demanding, or there is an external situation that is changing. They could be an industry trend. So there could be a situation where, there's a new competitor, or there is new cost pressure, or there is new competitive pressure, and therefore your client has to change. Right? There could be COVID. COVID is a big trend, and in Bacchus's case, COVID is a major driver of sales for their clients, right? So if COVID is driving it, you need to start your story with COVID, okay? And like in their case, there were specific incidents. One of the clients became a client after, there was an incident where 5 people in a factory floor had to were tested positive, and they had to shut the whole factory down. And suddenly that became a strategic priority for everybody in that client, right? So the more topical this solution is, the more powerful your story becomes, okay? And as we will see, either you start your story by either number 1 or number 3, which is who the customer is, or what is driving their behavior now, okay? Because that is what draws them in, that's what hooks their attention, okay? Number 4 is, what is the downside to the customer not achieving their goal, okay? Now, this is another very common mistake that is made in a lot of the way business pitches work, okay? Now, in the story world, you need to talk about a contrast. So there is a downside, which is, if things go bad, this is what the world will look like. And there is an upside. If things go well, there is how the good world will look like. And then you need to show the contrast between the two. Okay. It's the relative contrast that makes that impact, not absolutes. So if you go in and, the common mistake I see is you go in and start talking about, how great the product or the solution is and how great life will be with it. But there's nothing to contrast it to. Till they've felt the contrast, they will not appreciate the value or power of your solution, right? So you have to make them feel what the downside risk is. Okay, so in this case, what is the downside to the customer? For example, well, they'll have a compliance issue. They'll not be able to meet their KPIs. I would go even stronger and say, you might have to shut your operations down, right? You will not be able to meet your business goals. You might have to lay off people, right? So we need to make a stark downside to make the happy situation look good. And, just contrast principle is one of the principles of storytelling. And the clear example I'll give is, if you walk into a dark room, right, you would, everything is dark. You can't see anything, right? Because you have a great contrast from, you came from a well-lit area, you came into a dark room, everything is dark. You sit in that dark room for 5 minutes, you can see, right? You'll definitely not hit stuff. You can see the big stuff. You might even be able to get around and you might be quite operational. So unless you've shown the contrast of what a well-lit room looks like, the dark will not have an impact. That's the contrast principle, right? So it's very important to have both the downside and the upside, which was the number 4. Number 5, what is the challenge? A quest is interesting only if it's difficult. Remember in the Bond movie, if he could just go out, capture the villain, and it was done, it would be a very bad story, right? It would be a story which is not engaging at all. There has to be a struggle. There has to be a difficulty. What makes the quest difficult? Okay. And in this case, it's, well, the technology tools available so far are unreliable, which give approximate answers. And there are 3 kinds of difficulty you will find. One is, of course, it's just difficult. It's just difficult in the sense that you have to do a lot of work. You have to do a lot of hard things. You have to do a lot of difficult things, like climb mountains to get there. That's the challenge, first kind of challenge. Second kind of challenge is you have a villain who's actively stopping you. So it could be that your competitors are outsmarting you all the time. It could be that COVID is bringing down, so COVID is the villain. So the second kind of challenge is a villain. The third kind of challenge is you have to sacrifice. So if you have to overcome the odds, you have to make a sacrifice, right? So and we've all seen Bollywood movies where the hero has to make great sacrifices. So maybe he has to give up his love to satisfy his family, right? Maybe he has to give up his aspirations so that his sibling can achieve their dream. So whatever. So there are difficult challenges, there are sacrifices, and there are villains. Those are the three kinds of difficulties. Those are the three kinds of challenges, right? And again, the bigger challenge, the bigger the challenge, the more interesting the story, the more engaging the story. Then you talk about how can your offering help the customer overcome the challenge? What is the magical superpower you bring, right? So in Bacchus's case, what they do is they bring accuracy of indoor tracking. And anybody, we all understand GPS works very well outdoors. Indoors, we don't know. I mean, you could be anywhere in the building and your location technologies don't know. Even your indoor location technologies are very, very poor. But in contact tracing, you need to be within, within centimeters accuracy. Therefore, it's a difficult job, right? And what new capability does your product enable? So with that magical superpower, what is the hero now able to do that they were not able to do before? Okay. It helps them track location accurately, trace contacts, right? And ensure safety and keep productivity, right? Then you talk about what are the emotional needs. So there are needs which are operational or financial, and there are needs which are emotional, which are on the inside. So in this case, it's peace of mind, right? So emotional needs are usually peace of mind, like you have over here. It could be being in control of the situation. It could be feeling confident about a solution. It could be being able to plan more aggressively, right? Being able to dream big. So things which happen on the inside for the hero, which create an emotional benefit. That's what you need to lay it out, right? And good stories touch both the outside. So it's really good stories touch at three levels. And I'm giving you a secret of what creates an awesome story. An awesome story touches at the internal motivation, which is the emotional need, the external motivation, which is what they want to achieve, and the good of the world, right? Make the world a safer place. So when Bond wins in the end, he's able to do, he actually achieves four things. He makes the world a safer place. He, of course, beats the villain and eliminates that immediate threat. He gets the girl, right? So all Bond movies end with a kiss, because that's the third kind of need or reward that is being satisfied. And as a result, he feels he's done something, like he feels that satisfaction. So it's really those four motivations that are all satisfied by the quest, right? He satisfies an internal need, he gets an emotional reward, he gets an operational reward, which is beating the villain, and he gets the he saves the world. And this is true in every great story. If you look at Ramayana is about, of course, Ram defeating Ravan, right? So it's about him conquering evil. But it doesn't stop there. He's able to bring Sita home, right? He's able to come home, and he ushers in Ram Rajya, right? So it's working at all four levels. That's what great stories do. Okay. Then number 9 is, what is the one thing stopping your customer from proceeding? So this is the secondary challenge. This is, once the customer adopts or decides to adopt your product, what are the challenges they will face? And usually this is a challenge of, well, I might have to change my process. I might have to retrain my sales, my team. I might have to integrate your product into my systems, right? So there is usually a secondary hurdle for them to adopt your solution, and you need to tell that in your story, but don't put it up front. So, one mistake I see is people start out by saying, oh, my product is so easy to use. Oh, my product integrates really well into all these other technologies. That's a mistake to start out. You need to tell that, but tell that later. So the point here is that no customer will buy your product because it's easy to use. They will buy your product because it gives them a capability that they need. But they might choose not to buy your product because it's difficult to use or it needs integration. So first thing, you have to sell them on what your product does for them. Once they're convinced, then they'll want to know, hey, is it easy to use? Is it easy to adopt? What kind of integration do I need? What kind of support do I need? Those are secondary challenges. You need to bring them in after you've made the sale on the primary value proposition, not before, right? If you bring it in before, you will unnecessarily complicate your sales pitch. You're throwing more information without giving more value, and it's not really answering any question, right? Bring them in at a later stage. And number 10, you want to end your pitch with what does the world look like after the customer adopts your product, which is the happily ever after. And like I said, it's really at 4 levels, whatever you can hit. It needs to solve their immediate problem, right? Bond needs to complete that mission. It needs to change their life, right? It needs to give them an emotional benefit, and it needs to change the world, right? Whichever you can, of these 4, however much you can bring that in, and that's what your big happily ever after looks like. And you'll notice that it's in the same sequence. So for example, number 9, don't bring that in at the beginning. Bring that in only after you've sold them on the value proposition of the core product, right? Once they're convinced that it'll give them the value that they need. Then you bring in the secondary questions and resolve those, and you end on that high. Okay, I will just pause here and take some questions if you have any, only on this, please. Okay. Will these question materials be shared post the session? Well, we've already shared the template. We might have a recording of the session, but I'm not planning to share the deck over here. How does the story change if the pitch is to an investor? I'll cover that later on. What should be a good breakup of spend time on downside, challenge, or solution? Okay, a good question. That depends. Okay, now in some cases, okay, so that depends on what is your audience's understanding. If they understand the problem really well, you just need to mention it. If they don't, you need to build it up. If they understand the solution very well, again, you don't need to build that up. You just need to focus on the differentiator or the adoption challenges, right? So it's about, that depends on the context of the audience, right? Sometimes you can just gloss over some of these things. So sometimes, the customer is so aware of that pain that you just need to mention it in one word and they understand it. Sometimes the customer may not be aware of the pain, right? So when we go into a case of an Uber, right? We don't even understand that the problem exists. I mean, we know the problem, but it's very latent. It's deeply embedded. Somebody has to remind us that you face this problem on a daily basis, right? So it depends. Can you repeat the 4 levels of awesome stories? 4 levels are, there is the solution to the problem that was outlined, which means you need to complete the mission. There was you need to make a better world. You need to solve an internal challenge for the hero, which is, an emotional need, and they need to get a reward, which is a private reward. So, in Bond's case, that is a case. In, your professional case, it could be, you get the promotion, you get the recognition of your peers, you get the appreciation of the customer. So, it's, if you go back to the omnivore video I saw, we see the entrepreneur get a thank you text from the farmer. That's the emotional payoff that I'm talking about, right? So you need the the internal, they need to feel confident, or they need to feel accomplished, they need to get recognition, they need to solve the mission, and they need to make a better world. Those are the four. Okay. If it's a challenge that long, is how about showing an incident? So again, it depends, right? So whatever will bring it up in the client's mind. So if it's an obvious one like COVID, pull that up there, right? If it's a new competitor, a new tech change, bring that up there. Or you just highlight, I'll not spend time in here, but go look at, there's plenty of blogs on Zora, how they do their pitch deck. And there's an excellent blog which is floating around on the net on how Zora does a pitch deck. And they do an excellent slide on how to start with a trend. Right, so it's contextual to your environment, your industry, your solution. We will see how it's done over here, but it's usually the answer of either 1 or 3. Okay, we've answered this one. Good breakup. How should we prioritize the solutions between scenarios where problem is unknown, where problem is known? So usually you want to anchor on one big problem. Don't try to build up too many problems, or you lose the customer. 1 or 2 big problems, right? And I would say the higher the problem, the better. Higher means the more strategic the problem, the better. Don't get into a tactical problem. Usually a tactical problem is there to solve a bigger problem. So if we go back to the Carrefour story, it was about, customers' demographic trends are changing. They want, they care more about their food, about traceability, about choice, about quality. So, good news is we live in such a dynamic world today that customer trends are changing all the time. Tech trends are changing all the time. You can't go wrong with all of this. You just have to pick something which will resonate with your audience and test it out. I can't tell you what it is. You have to figure it out, right? But once you figure it out, put it at the top of your pitch and you'll get a good story. Okay, so we've covered all the questions over here. Okay, there's one question and this is the last question, then I'll move on. Is explaining the current challenges followed by how does the product help with those challenges enough to bring out the contrast? No, so you want to bring out don't get into explaining how the product works. You want to first develop the contrast. So what I say is, develop the need before you develop the, before you explain the solution, which means you say, here's what you want the world to look like, or here's your big challenge in the world. Here's a downside. Here's what things could look like if things work well, right? So now they have a crying desire to want to know how to solve that problem. Now they're willing to listen. If you start too early showing them what your product can do or how the tech works, you've not engaged them enough. So they will not want to invest that particular time in trying to understand their solution. So you may lose your audience at that, right? It's almost create the desire before you start to answer it. In fact, what I often try to say is create a desire and don't even fulfill it completely so that they start asking you for more details. That's when you have a beautiful situation, right? When a customer starts asking you for more details about your product, your solution. The way you get that is if you create that burning desire in them to want your solution, right? They will start asking. And you create that burning desire by connecting your solution to their goals. If there's one thing you take away from this whole workshop, it should be that. Help them see their goals, create that burning desire, see the contrast, and you need to give them just enough for them to say, okay, maybe your solution can help them achieve their goals. Then they will start driving it from there, okay? Now, we've seen the questions, we've seen the answers, we've seen how the Vakas deck worked before. Now, let me show you how we build the story on this. Okay, so now, very briefly, I talked about, there's an architecture and their design patterns in storytelling. So I talked about 3 things in storytelling. That was my big promise to you. architecture, design patterns, tech stack. I've given you a glimpse of the story architecture, right? We're seeing it in action right now. I'm showing you on your screen, some design patterns. Now there are some 20 odd design patterns that are commonly used in business stories, right? And when I do my storytelling engagements with some corporates, we pick. So we build videos and we actually pick some of those design patterns. What I'm giving you is the top 3. This is like 90% of the sales stories fit these patterns. Okay, and it depends on, somebody asked a question, well, where do you highlight, or what is the, so it depends, right? It's if you're selling a solution which is, very transformational, which is very futuristic, which is about, well, something has changed in the world and now you need to change. The Zora, the second one on your screen, works very well. You bring out the relevant change. You say that what worked for you in the past will break in the future, and you need to change how you work, and that's where I'll help, right? Or if there is a new situation, right? If there's a new regulation, if there's a new tech change, if there's COVID, you talk about a situation, a complication, right? So the first pattern works very well, right? If you have a situation where there is a potential which has not been taken fully advantage of. So, maybe there was a trend or there was a need they always had, but they just never took it, maybe because the technology didn't allow it, or maybe it was just not mainstream. So for example, most B2B companies don't use storytelling because the belief was, yeah, storytelling doesn't work in B2B. Some progressive companies have now started using it and getting great results, right? The mainstream B2B player still believes storytelling is not applicable to me, right? So in that situation, we talk about possibility. We say, what if you could explain great concepts? You could engage your audiences even for deep tech, right? Then we talk about what is the problem in being able to do that. Well, you need emotional engagement. You can't get emotions through logic, right? Then we introduce our product. Story process is a way to bring emotions in a systematic way into a technology product. We talk about the potential, right? What can it do to your product, to your sales? And then the promise, which is a happily ever after, right? And in that case, the design pattern is on the screen. That's the third one. So I've seen, if it's more complication or risk driven, if it's more, trend driven, or if it's more possibility driven, usually in 80 to 90% of the sales stories fall into one of these 3 buckets. Okay? So this is the second big piece you need to take. Okay. And with that, let me just switch over to the revised deck for Vacus. Okay, you should be able to see the new slide deck, and let me just project it. Okay. So how do we start the story? Remember, the first one was, here's a big change in the world, right? COVID-19 is an immediate and a big threat, right? We give 2 examples of companies, great companies, which have been brought down by COVID, because they had to shut their operations, right? Now go back to your notes, to the template number 1, number 3. Okay, so let me do this. Let me just run through the deck real quick, and then we'll come back and analyze it, right? And at that point, you should also be building your own sales deck. So number 1, number 3. So let's just go through. Guys, okay, so I'm switching gears now. I'm Vacus, I'm presenting. Okay, let's pretend I'm Prateek. So COVID-19 is a imminent and a huge threat because it will bring down your operations. You have to shut shop, as we see some companies already facing. Okay, you need safety first, right now. Okay, because safety is no longer a nice to have. It is a critical need for your business to continue to run. However, ensuring safety is not that simple, because all the current tools that are available in the market, all the current technologies that are available in the market, do not allow you accurate indoor tracking. To do contact tracing, you can't be approximate. Let's say that two people are within 10 feet of each other. You know what? They could be in different rooms. They could be through a wall. They could even be on different floors and still be within that distance of each other, right? So you would get a lot of false positives if you had that kind of an inaccurate location tracking, which means your solutions become useless, which leads to all kinds of compliance issues and operational risk, to the level of where you could have to shut down your manufacturing plant. So what are you going to do? This is where Vaca CRF comes in. Our product helps you get back in control. Okay, which with patented technology, we provide an accuracy of 30 centimeters, just 30 centimeters, without having to flood your shop floor with a lot of readers. Okay, plus we give you very good battery life, and we have very good applications to help you manage this seamlessly with very, very little interference on your existing network. Okay? And by the way, any investments you make here are scalable investments to other applications later. How does the product work? Okay? We let you use technology to so that you don't have risk and you don't have fear anymore. And at this point, I'll get into a little bit of detail on technology, right? Give you a bit of solution highlight. It is using, of course, it's using triangulation to get the accuracy, but the location accuracy is within 60 centimeters, which is within the margin for error for COVID contact tracing. Okay. Hence, you can save lives, you can save time, and of course, you can prevent disruption to your operations. It's a proven technology across multiple clients, multiple geographies. And if you remember, one of the questions that Pratik had mentioned, one of the secondary challenges was, are you a proven tech, and can you help me across my global operations? And deploy workers, get back in control, right? The end. Very simple, right? And you notice the facts of the story are exactly the same. I've not interfered with the facts at all. Again, if you go back to what Vinod Khosla said, you have to have the facts on your side first, but that is not enough. Then you have to do storytelling. So first get the facts on your side, right? Then I can help you with the storytelling. So let's just dissect the story. Okay, and now you can follow along with the template. Notice the question 1 and question 3 on your, so they said the first slide needs to be about question 1 or question 3 on that template. Question 3 was, what is the major trend? The answer was COVID. So we start out with COVID as the first line, right? The big trend. In your case, it may be, if it was an ongoing problem, you might want to deal with, and depending on which story pattern you pick, you'll pick and choose. So at this stage, pick the slide deck in your slide, pick the slide in your slide deck which matches either 1 on 3, mark that as slide number 1, And if you don't have such a slide today, it's quite possible. Create a placeholder. You have all the facts, you have all the data to construct that slide, but create a placeholder slide, put a label on it, right? That should be a slide 1 in your final slide deck. Okay. If you don't, you could just write it down on a piece of paper and build your slide decks later. But slide number 1 in your pitch deck should be matched question number 1 or question number 3 on your template. It goes into what is the quest, right? Which was question number 2. What is the hero's quest? So we say the hero's quest is to keep their operations going while ensuring safety of their operations, right? That was the answer for Marcus. So that is your slide number 2. Slide number 2 is what is the hero's quest? Again, if you have a slide in your current slide deck which matches this, copy paste it. If not, just put a placeholder, build that slide deck later. You already have all this information. Next is the challenge, right? Again, you probably already have this. What is the challenge? The error which will be there is very often you would have already put the challenge and the solution on the same slide. No, don't do that. Elementary mistake. Break it up into 2 slides, right? You don't want to introduce your solution too quickly. First, create the need, then produce your solution. If you bring your solution in too early, it'll be rejected. If you create the need, the customer will want your solution. Okay, so what you want to do is, at this stage, put the slide which highlights the problem. Right? What is the challenge? I believe that was question number 5 in the deck, in the sheet, if I'm not mistaken. Okay. At this stage, you talk about the solution, right? What is it that you're bringing in, and what is the emotional benefit of what you're bringing in, right? So we're talking about get back in control, and you bring in, right? So basically, we're highlighting the difference between slide number, need of the hour, safety first. This is your downside, right? And here we've contrasted it with where you want to be, right? Sorry, where you want to be. So we built the contrast, and subliminally your client, your prospect should feel an emotional relief at this point. Okay, and they will associate that with your product in a very positive way. Now, let me just digress for a second. This slide deck that I've built still needs work, guys. It's just a patch together of slides. It needs some more work, and I'll talk about that in a second. But this is kind of building the skeleton of a story. Next, we get into a little bit of the product details, right? It's also building some credibility, building some explanation, right? This is kind of your placeholder area to get into a little more product detail. You have permission now to talk about your product because your customer wants to know more about your product, right? You've created that need and desire. And you need to give some details at this stage because that will build credibility, right? Because we all want to know, why your solution will work. So the sequence of events is they say, okay, I have a big problem. Oh, great, you can solve it for me. Why would your product work? Okay, I see that you're doing something. I can get into more details and understand this later. Or if it's simple enough, they'll say, oh, I see how this works, right? That's how you get them on board. And at this stage, you give them the benefits, which is, if you go back to the 4 points I talked about, this is what gives them the, let's resolve the problem, right? The mission accomplished, the benefits, right? Now you want to give them a little more credibility. Now they want to be able to say, okay, I see that you're solving my problem, but can I trust you? right? Are you reliable? Okay, then you're answering that question. They will also want to know, whatever secondary challenges. So, in Vakas's case, we didn't get that question very often about, well, will I have to change my process? Will I have to get some other technology training, blah, blah. If you get those kinds of questions, now is the time to answer them, right? Bring out those questions and answer them over here. The secondary challenges, right? Point number 9 on your, on that script as well. Okay. In Vakas's case, the two big questions people were asking were, are you proven, and are you available in multiple geographies? Hence, we're answering those questions over here, right? And you always want to end with the happily ever after, right? Happily ever after is you get the benefits, you accomplish the mission, right? You get the emotional benefit, you get back in control. Okay. And to make it more powerful, we could add 2 more things. We could say, you will achieve your goals personally. Hey, Mr. CXO, you will achieve your KPIs, right? Which is the equivalent of the hero getting the kiss at the end. And you will make the world a safer place, right? Which is the equivalent of Bond saving the world. We could add those, but they're not essential, right? So in a great story, you don't need that. In an awesome story, you do. Okay, so we've seen how the pitch deck is built using that same template, right? What I'll do is, let me just talk about what needs to be done next to make it, make it good, make it feel ready. What you need to do now is to do your creative work on it. Now you need to, what you have is a skeleton. Now you go through and make sure that the transitions work, make sure there are not, for example, this slide, I would do a little bit more work on, right? It's too busy. I would cut it down, right? I would bring out, nobody will read 10 bullet points. I would bring it down to 3 bullet points. What are the most important things? Maybe have a picture instead of more text, right? Make sure that the transitions work across slides. Make sure that it's creating the right kind of emotional reaction. Again, this slide, I would change, right? Here, my major objective is to show them current solutions don't work, right? Too much text. Okay. So right now, what I did is I just took a copy paste of the existing decks. So to show that, look, even with your current decks, you get to a reasonably good situation. Then you apply some basic principles, basic communication principles, and you get a fantastic deck. Okay, same thing here. It should, too many bullets, reduce that, increase the value, reduce the points. The value proposition point, increase the value proposition. Okay? I think this is a decent slide. Again, this is a decent slide, but I would cut the text. If the client pauses to start reading the text, you lose them. Okay, same thing. I think too much text in this because usually you want the slide deck, you would be presenting, and so you don't want too much text in it. But those are basic principles, of good pitch decks. Right. And again, in the happily ever after, so one thing which, let me just point out on the right side of the deck, the post-COVID applications. I think the point that Pratik is trying to make here is that there's a lot more you can do with the infrastructure that you deploy now without having extra cost. Very good point. You want to bring that out. It's not obvious from this picture. So what you want to do is always make sure that your slides are saying what you need it to say. The template tells you what you need it to say. Make sure your slides are saying that. So your template, your slide, this slide needs to say, hey, with Vakas, you will be back in control. You can deploy your solution quickly and ensure safety and compliance, and you will have a future-ready solution, right? Say it, don't imply it. Okay. I hope that gave you a good picture of how to take your existing sales deck, use the template, and get to a story deck, which is a great pitch deck. I'll pause here, take questions, post which we'll get into other things like, investor pitching, elevator pitch, some more advanced, advanced skills, including how do you simplify complex concepts. And I will show, pitches by, like I promised in some of the social media posts, pitches by Zuckerberg, Travis, and Musk. Okay, we'll just pause real quick to take some questions. Okay, share more on how to answer how you will do founder make that work effectively. Not clear what that question is, please amplify. Please share more on how to answer how you will do what. No, not clear at all. If your product is good to have but not must have, I'm sorry, I can't help you. You have to have the facts on your side, guys. Nothing I'll tell you will save a weak product. Okay, a weak proposition. No, you please go back to the drawing board, work on it. If you don't have a great product, you're wasting, I'm sorry to be blunt, but I'd rather you hear it from me than get bad news from the market later. Okay. Any questions right now about how to apply the template? I'll answer. How does the content in the pitch deck change when you're not there to present? Okay, so I think there are two questions here. So, how does the content in the pitch deck change when you're not there to present? And second is when you're sending it over email. So what I say is that, if you're sending it over email, I don't like sending complete decks over email in the first place. When you send stuff over email, I send a teaser, so I'll actually prepare a second deck, which is a subset of, or, a variation on my main deck. It does not need to have all the points. It should stand on itself. Obviously, it can actually have more text, no doubt about it, because it'll be read rather than presented. But it should not be the same deck as you use in presentations. It should not have the same content that you use in presentations. It needs to be sharper. So the way to think about is this. If you're sending something over an email, your goal is really to get that meeting. Okay, your goal is not to make the sale. Okay, your goal is to get that meeting, and during the meeting is to get that sale. Okay? So think of it differently. When you send a pitch deck or an email in general, it's like a trailer to a movie, and your goal is to bring the audience to watch that movie. Okay, when you have that live meeting is when you're showing that movie. Okay, so when you're doing that, you need to hook them, give them enough to entice them, and I'll cover that a little later about how to have, tell your story real fast, tell your story in 30 seconds, where the objective is to get that meeting. Okay. Next question is, how much technical detail should we add to the pitch deck? Okay, again, it depends. Okay, you should have enough technical details to make your story credible and make it understandable. And depends on the audience, depends on the product. If you're getting in front of a technical audience and you don't answer the technical questions, they'll fall flat. If you're getting in front of a non-technical audience and you start talking tech, you will not connect. Right, so that depends on your audience completely. So what you need to do is talk at a level where it connects with your audience. And one thing I'll say is, and just to digress, I want to talk about the scope of today's session. Today's session is not to talk about the content of your pitches. Today's session is to talk about the story structure of your pitches. Okay, your content, there are, so with SINE, with plugin, we have a coaching session. If you are a startup, you will usually have some mentors, or you'll have some advisors within your own team. You will work on what is the right level of content you need to have for your customers, what level of detail you need. Please work that out there. It will vary a lot depending on your context and your audience. Okay. The short answer though is enough technical details to answer the core questions, to provide credibility, but don't go overboard and start losing your audience. What I like to do is I like to have, build the story structure, say, okay, for me to answer this particular questions, for example, the question in the client's mind at this stage would be, well, how does this product address my challenge? I'll say, what details do I have to give to answer that question for the client? Include only those details. Don't go more than that. Leave the rest in the appendix. Let them ask a question. If at this stage they pause you and ask a more detailed questions, you've got them. That's what you want. If they're not totally hooked yet and you start throwing more details at them, guess what? They will tune out. Okay, so if you don't go on providing too much technical detail, that would be a mistake. But make sure that you create the desire and provide enough technical detail to build credibility. Okay. Next question is, even with facts, one can go wrong with the pitch, overthinking that customer will need this. How to tackle such situations? Okay, guys, so it's just like any other thing you build. Test, test, test. Build an MVP, test, right? I mean, I'm a techie, I'm talking to techies, let's use that language, guys. When you build a product, how do you make sure you're building the right value, right amount of depth, not overdoing it, not underdoing it? You test. You build an MVP, you test, right? Don't over-engineer it. The same thing applies to your pitches. Use your experience, build something, test, refine, test, refine, test, refine. Okay. In general, what I can tell you is, just like you'll have a tendency to over-engineer your product, you will have a tendency to over-engineer your pitch. Just keep that in mind. Otherwise, test. Downsize versus creating fear. A lot of companies create fear in sales by making the downside. Okay, it's not downsize, it's downside. Okay, a big difference. So downside is the downside risk, what things can go wrong. So the question is downside versus creating fear. Lots of companies create fear in sales by making the downside seems like a chaos. Does that work in the long term? So yes, the short answer is, I mean, if the downside risk of not deploying the situation is actually bad, yes, you have to highlight it. Yes, your client has to feel it, and very often that creates fear, and that's perfectly okay. What I'll say is be honest. Okay, create fear, create excitement, create whatever emotion you need to. Absolutely create that. But be honest. Don't create fake fear, because in the long term you'll be caught. Okay. But again, if you have the facts on your side and you're honest to your facts, storytelling is not just good to have, it's essential. Okay, I'm paraphrasing Vinod Khosla over here. So yes, absolutely create fear, and you can see some of these stories do that, right? Okay. In case of grant or fundraise, how to use the template sequence if there is a mandate for fixed sequence? Okay, so I mean, there are two questions here. One is, I'm not addressing fundraise. I will come to that a little later. You get a similar process, but not the same template sequence at all. This template sequence is designed for a sales situation, not a fundraising situation. Second thing is, if there is a mandate for a fixed sequence of templates, fixed sequence, you're talking about a competition, you're not talking about a fundraise. So let's be very clear. I hate startup competitions. I know that's a controversial statement. Startup competitions are a waste of time. Most entrepreneurs are getting into it. It's a vanity metric. Very few startup competitions actually get you in front of the right audience or get you valuable feedback. If you are getting in front of real investors and you are getting real feedback, 9 times out of 10, they will not mandate that you have to have these template or this structure. Okay, if it's a competition where they just have a scoring card and they have a structure, usually it's a waste of time. I would not do it, and deal with it any which way you want. You can tell stories on those particular slides. You can emphasize some slides, de-emphasize some slides so you get your story. But yeah, if they're constraining you, you have to fit within that. But it's an academic exercise. That's not a real life situation. How do product demos, experimental data, etc., fit in during the pitch? Okay, good question. Product demos and experimental data. Okay, so product demos and experimental data. So let's deal with each separately. Product demos is a great tool. The sequence remains the same. A product demo may be a way to answer one of those points. So for example, if you want to grab some, remember the first thing you want to do is grab their attention. And the first thing I talked about is, bring out, did something happen to create a need, or was there a latent need? If a demo is the way to bring that out, start with that, right? If a demo is a way to show, for example, when you get to the point, well, how does my solution answer your problem? Point number 4 or 5. If a demo, instead of a slide, a demo is the best way to do it, absolutely go for it. What you have to be careful about is don't make a demo about features, make it a demo about the power of the product. There's a big difference between the two. What's wrong about demos is, most demos start out by saying, okay, here's the first screen. Here's how you log into the product. Here's how you create a user account. Guys, don't waste my time. I don't buy a product to log in. I don't buy a product to create a user account. I buy a product to accomplish my mission. Show how your product helps me accomplish my mission. Then I might ask you, okay, is creating a user account difficult? Show me how to do that. But don't start out by showing me how to create a user account in your product. Okay, I will do a little bit later. I'll show you how a great product demo works a little later. I'll actually show you a product demo. But short answer is a product demo is a great tool. It's show, not tell, but do it at the right place, which is the same story structure, and in the right way, which is show the power of the product, not the functionality, not the features. Okay, experimental data is again a way to build credibility. It's build validation. So bring that in at the point you're building credibility or validation. Don't start with that. Unless, again, experimental data is to highlight a problem, right? If data is a way to highlight a problem of why something is difficult, bring them in at the problem stage, right? So again, it's figure out what the purpose of the demo or the data is and bring it in when you have to accomplish that. Okay, next is, at the session, can I get your views on my pitch deck? Sorry, no, we won't have time to do that. For plugin participants, we will have a separate tutorial later on where we will get into those details. But sorry, I don't think we'll have time to get into specific pitch decks today. Okay, I'm sorry. Okay, we're done here. Okay, now let me finish this up. Okay, get back into the main deck. We still have an hour. We have a lot to cover, guys. So I'm just going to go back in to the main deck. Okay. Let me go into a bit of advanced skills, and I'll move fast because we have only about an hour left. So let's just do a refresh. What are we trying to achieve? I just want to make sure we stay on the basics. Really, we want to engage, we want to clarify, we want to inspire. Storytelling is all about creating engagement, clarifying deep concepts, inspiring your audience to action, right? You need to have your facts already done. Okay. Now, in this section, I'm going to talk about how do you create inspiration. Okay. And there are certain pillars that you have. You need to have a hero which is relatable, which means your audience needs to say, ah, I relate to this person over here. This is me. Okay. There needs to be a quest which is aspirational. The quest itself has to be motivating. It has to be emotional. So let me give you an example of a quest which is not motivating, and you know what I mean. Creating more efficiencies, saving money, not inspirational. Making more money, not inspirational. So money is not inspirational. So, very often we lay out the quest and, you go back and examine your pitch and they say, we save a company 20% on a certain thing. Guys, that's a side benefit. That can be a side element, but your core, your core aspiration has to be at a higher level. It has to be about helping customers. It has to be about changing lives. And by the way, I create more efficiency. Okay, the stakes have to be high. What that means is the contrast between the win and the loss has to be high. Right? Big challenge. It has to be something which is challenging. It has to be hard to do, or there has to be a villain stopping me from getting there. And it has to transform at the end, which means it creates a big impact. An example of a transformation is it saves the world, or a transformation is it changes life for your hero. Let me show you what a really inspirational story looks like. We've all seen this before probably, but I still get the goosebumps when I see it.
ये मैं, ये यूसुफ, लंगोटिया यार सी मेरा। लाहौर में हमारे घर के सामने एक बड़ा बाग था। उस बाग का गेट बाबा आदम के जमाने। रोज शाम को हमने वहाँ पतंगे उड़ानी और उसके बाद जाके यूसुफ की दुकान से झझरिया चुरा के खानी।
झझरिया?
और मेरा साहब नमस्ते।
नमस्ते, मेरी पोती मुंबई वाली।
और बेटे क्या हाल चाल है?
की तंग गली फिर से कूदे फांदे, छोटी छोटी मीठी चोरी गांठ लेके बांधे।
हेलो, अस्सलाम वालेकुम।
फजल स्वीट्स?
हाँ जी। दादाजान, दिल्ली से किसी की कॉल है।
हेलो,
यूसुफ अंकल?
कौन?
जी मैं सुमन बोल रही हूँ दिल्ली से, आपके बचपन के दोस्त बलदेव जी की पोती।
याद है बचपन में आप दोनों झझरिया चुरा के खाते थे?
बचपन की तंग गली फिर से कूदे फांदे, छोटी छोटी मीठी चोरी गांठ लेके बांधे। एक पतंग सा उड़ता था परिंदों की तरह, परिंदों की तरह, परिंदों की तरह। एक दौर था मन मन मोर था, मन मन मोर था।
बच्चों के वक्त हम रातों रात हिंदुस्तान आ गए।
दादू?
यूसुफ दी बड़ी याद आती।
कागजों की कश्तियों में डूबा रहता था, झांकती खिड़कियों में उलझा रहता था। वो भी क्या दौर था, मन पे न जोर था। एक दौर था मन मन मोर था, एक दौर था मन मन मोर था।
भैया थोड़ा जल्दी।
मन मोर।
हाँ जी,
हैप्पी बर्थडे यारा। यूसुफ ओए यूसुफ मेरे बल्लू ओए यूसुफ यार।
It's an amazing story, right? Especially at the end, you would notice they're boys again. It's a transformation. That's what a transformation is. Okay, so make it about the user and make it what they want to be. Okay, and then you just position your product. So Google very subtly comes into it, right? Your user, so the old man wants to be with his childhood friend again. The granddaughter wants to see his, her grandfather happy, and your product is just the enabler. That's what makes an inspiring story, right? I'll also show another, so there's a completely different way, and this is another very funny story about which focuses on the transformation aspect. What does your customer aspire to be, and how do you enable it? Enjoy.
Got some Harley inside? Let it out at Harley-Davidson of Scottsdale.
So how many of us middle-aged people, I should say, wanted to go buy a Harley right afterwards? And it's not about product features at all, right? It didn't talk about horsepower and mileage and all those things. It's about inspiring the customer to be more. Oh, God. Okay. The other big thing you need to do is don't try to impress. And this is, I don't know how many times I've caught myself doing this. Try to impress the other person with how great my product or my technology or how clever I am. No, you do that, you lose your audience. Seek to inspire, not to impress, right? And let's just see and just show you what a good demo looks like, right? When I talk about how you inspire, not impress, we're talking about a drone here, right? Drone is a very common technology nowadays, right? And here's somebody who's just demoing a drone. Notice how he puts the customer into a powerful position in this. And more importantly, notice the customer, the audience response. When is the last time you had an audience applauding when you demoed? Okay, think about that as you watch this.
The spark in my hand, and I press the power button twice. Spark starts looking for a pilot, and now that it recognizes me, it will automatically take off from my hand. Within seconds, I can get the spark in the air. Now, it's flying, but I need to control it. I want to angle it around to get just the right shot that I want. So to do that, we designed an interface using the simplest control interface that we could think of. And it's not your smartphone. Take a look. Just using my palm, I can move spark left, I can move it right, I can use it up and down, I can push it away from me, and I can pull it towards me. It's that simple to control, and it truly feels like magic. Now, within this range, I've got about 3 feet between me and the spark. But that doesn't show the epic perspective that drones are known for. So in order to get that perspective, I'm going to tell Spark to fly a little bit further away from me, and I'll do that by waving. Just like that, Spark flies about 10 feet away from me and keeps me centered in the middle of the shot. It's fantastic. So I still want to be able to control my shot. This is maybe not the best background. I want to get those chandeliers captured behind me. So I'm just going to move. And Spark is actively tracking me as I move around so that I can choose the right scenery behind me. All right, this is the shot I want. And I'm going to take a picture just by doing this. Just like that, I've taken a picture. From takeoff to taking a picture, it's seconds. Now, I can still bring it back and land just by waving. This is using gesture control from start to finish to control the Spark's flight. And I'll land it just on my palm. So you can take a...
Okay, so again we see the audience reaction, right? The audience applause. What was the big difference in this one? He put the audience in the position of a superhero, right? And once they feel like I can do magical stuff with this, right? They'll want your product, right? That is the storytelling part of it, right? So make it about the customer, make it about what their goals are, what their quest is, and make it about putting a superpower in their hands, which transforms them into the person they want to be. Now, just switching gears onto investor pitching. Okay. Now, what I want to just, so investor pitching is a very complex topic. Some of the principles are exactly the same. I just want to highlight the stuff you will not find out there. So, there's a lot of advice on the internet. There's a lot of very good advice. There's a lot of good templates. I'll not sell you just another template. Let me just talk about, what's the stuff that you will not find out there on the net. So first of all, is there an ideal investor pitch template? Okay, and the question is, there are two things I'll ask you. First is, if there was some ideal template, why does everybody publish their own? Why do we need so many of them? Second thing is, we know that the way the pitching works is we have about 3 to 5 minutes to convince them. Within 3 to 5 minutes, your audience has made up their mind whether they're interested or not. After that, it's basically finding more details, getting more conviction, checking boxes. But if you've not convinced them in the first 3 to 5 minutes, you will not convince them. Okay? Which means max you will be able to spend 3 to 4 slides on it. So why do most templates have 10 to 20 slides? Right? Obviously, that's not correct. So the point I'll make is, see, I'll not get into content, I'll not get into structure. We all know what's required, right? You need to talk about team, you need to talk about market, about the product, about traction, about, the what I call the X factor, or people will call as, what is your USP, what is, the secret sauce. There are many terms used for this. We all know we need to cover all this, right? We also know there are plenty of templates. All templates are wrong because by definition, they can't be correct. But some are useful. Okay. The reason they're all wrong is they focus on the content. All the templates will tell you, you need this information. You need team, you need market, you need, blah, blah. What they don't tell you is, how do you convince? How do you persuade? A template doesn't persuade, a story does. Okay, because persuasion happens in the heart and in the gut. The mind, but the data goes to the mind, right? And templates are designed to feed data to the mind. Okay, so basically, again, we all know this, right? When you're pitching, there's only three questions that the investor is interested in. What is the source of your value creation? How will you unlock the value that's out there, right? Is the value in information asymmetry? Is the value in some behavior change? Is the value in some new technology? What is the untapped value? How will you unlock it? And show me that it's huge, right? You do that, you've got the investor. You don't do it, you've lost them. Okay. It goes back to, you know, why does your venture exist? Meaning, what is missing in the world today? What is the unsolved problem, the unsolved, untapped opportunity that you are uniquely qualified to solve? So you have to show there is an untapped opportunity or an unsolved problem that you are uniquely, you know, that others will not do it better than you, right? And you can then create a big scale venture out of it. Okay. So which means you focus only on the data points that answer these questions. Okay. And it'll change from context to context. So in some cases, it's obvious what the untapped value is. Okay. So for example, you know, in the case of Uber, I already, you know, so the investor just had to be reminded that, you know, taxis is a pain today because I have to book a taxi up front, right? Or I have to go out on the street and flag one. There is no reliability. There's usually a long waiting time, right? There is less transparency about cost and so on. You know, billing is inconvenient. So you just have to remind the audience that, you know, there is a better way. The rest is then done. Moment you say, look, why can't I use my mobile and get a taxi within seconds or within minutes, right? I don't then have to show them this is a large opportunity. I don't have to show them that you know, a big business can be built on it, right? So which means that should be front and center in my pitch. In some cases, it should be, okay, I've got a tech breakthrough, right? So let's say I have, you know, a way to do price discovery for a new product. Now, I don't have to go about explaining to the investor why price discovery is a huge problem. They already know it, guys. So I should not waste my first valuable 3 minutes spending time explaining to them what price discovery is, why it's such a big problem, and why it's such a big business to be made. All I need to say is, hey, I have an answer, I have a great technology, and here's some credible evidence that I can give you price discovery real quick. And within the first 2-3 minutes, I have them. Now I'm just, you know, giving them details after that, right? So that should become front and center of your investor pitch. Sometimes it is, you know, they already know this is a big space, right? They might say, for example, you know, bringing AI into healthcare. You know, nobody's questioning that we need that. So what you need to say is, hey, I've got the best team in the world to bring AI into healthcare. I don't need to talk about the value of AI. I don't need to talk about the opportunities in healthcare, right? All I need to show is, here, I've got these 5 people who are top experts, right? Who can solve healthcare. So my point is, if you can identify what is the source of that untapped value, put that in the front, right? No template works. That should be the core. After that, once you've made the sale in the first 5 minutes, then you use your 10 or 20 slide template to give them all the checkbox information, right? So that's how you build your investor pitches. Second question is, who is the hero of the story? We got that question in B2B. I'm sure that's there in your mind. Is it the investor? Is it the entrepreneur? Is it the product? Is it the customer? Who? So I say 9 times out of 10, it should be the customer or the user whose life you're going to transform. Okay, and it could be counterintuitive in some cases. Remember I said it's whose life you will transform. So in some cases, it is not the paying customer, but it could even be your supplier. So like if you're doing let's say a two-sided marketplace. So let's say you're doing Airbnb. The hero of your story could be the renter. I mean, the person who's the property owner, right? Who you are changing, who you're saying, I'm changing you from just a homeowner with some spare space to suddenly somebody who's a host, right? So it depends on whose life you are transforming. That should be the hero of your story. Okay. Then so you said, this is whose life I'm transforming. This is the core of my untapped value. And the rest just flows from there. Okay. So, I will resist in an investor pitch, I will resist with going with a template. And like I said before, anybody who pushes a template on you is probably wrong. At least I strongly disagree with them. It's more about the the emphasis. Choose your story structure and then pick the right template which matches that. Don't start with a template and fill yourself in or lock yourself in. Okay. After you've done that, so first 2 to 3 minutes, you have to just show whose life you will transform and how is that going to unlock a lot of value. Then you go into take about 10 minutes to show how you will create a large valuable venture, which means you have the team to execute it, you have some tech advantage, you have an operating plan, you have some traction, so on and so forth, right? And within 10 to 15 minutes, you should be done with your core pitch, after which you get into, going deeper into questions that your investor is asking you, okay? That to me is the perfect investor pitch. So how do you show that you can build a large, so, the reason you exist should come first in the first 2 to 3 minutes, touch upon the team, market, product, traction in the next, 5 to 10 minutes, stop right there, then go into details only when, only if now there's interest and go into the details that the investor is interested in, right? Let me just please hold your questions. We can take, take 5 minutes of questions at the end of the elevator pitch section. We'll just go into the elevator pitch because it's also linked very closely to the investor presentation. And same thing, you will find tons of templates about how to create an elevator pitch. Guys, those are useful, but anytime you adhere to a template, the chances are you'll get it wrong. So all templates are wrong, some are useful. Okay. What is the question you need to answer? Like it goes back to who is the hero? Like whose life are you transforming? And what is the untapped value, right? What is the thing which is not being done today that, maybe you found a magical solution to and you are going to solve it, right? Which is what makes things interesting for your venture. If you just talk about that, you're done. That's all your elevator pitch needs to have, right? And if you were to describe Uber simply, okay, I mean, Uber does a lot of things, right? It creates this virtual network of so many cabs. It provides you, transparent billing. It provides you, an app to get a taxi to your doorstep. It provides drivers a way to earn. There's so many things it does, right? But how would you describe it? And a lot of people would say, well, it's a marketplace that connects drivers and riders. True, but not insightful. It's true, but it doesn't tell me what the hell it does. It doesn't tell me whose life it's making convenient, what value it's unlocking, right? So that is not a good elevator pitch. Let's hear from Trevor how he describes Uber.
You push a button, and in 5 minutes, a Mercedes S-Class or a town car comes and picks you up and takes you where you want to go.
That's it. I'm going to play it again.
You push a button, and in 5 minutes, a Mercedes S-Class or a town car comes and picks you up and takes you where you want to go.
Okay, so you'll notice he's talking about a Mercedes S-Class because, in the early days, that's what Uber used to do. If you asked him later, he might say, a car of your choice will come and pick you up. But notice, he's only talking about whose life he's transforming, which is the end user, and how he's doing it, right? He says, you push a button and in 5 minutes, a car comes and picks you up. Very simply. The rest is detail. An elevator pitch gets to the essence, right? At this stage, either you've hooked them or you've not. If you've not hooked them, saying it's a marketplace and I've got this amazing technology and whatnot is not going to convince them, right? If they are hooked, they will want to know, how do you do it? How do you scale? How do you, ensure that others are not competing with, right? It's the perfect elevator pitch, which means, Uber has a lot of features. It has maps, it has in-app payment, driver reviews, but those are details, guys. Those are what make the experience better. But the one-line description, the elevator pitch, is about simplicity, right? Nobody will, use an Uber because it has in-app payment, right? But you would say, okay, I need an Uber because I need a taxi right now. And oh, it's great. It's got an in-app payment and it's got maps, right? That's the difference. It's what's primary and what's secondary. Well, let's hear another one, another very controversial.
We had a very simple focus and idea. The goal wasn't to make a huge community site. It was to make something where you could type in someone's name and find out a bunch of information about them.
Isn't that beautiful? It's so simple. And that's what Facebook is at the end. You type someone's name and you find a bunch of information about them. Right? It's simple. It gets right to the point, right to the value proposition. And most people on Facebook are there only so that they can, they can keep track of friends or stalk someone. Right? Simple. Okay, so elevator pitch gets to, I'm just summarizing, repeating, and this is also true for investor pitching. The first few minutes, it needs to be about whose life you're transforming, how, right? And what is it that is sort of the magical unmet need in the world? Focus on that, make the sale, then you fill in the details, in an elevator pitch, in an investor pitch on, the core other building blocks, right? And there you can use story structures, you can use existing templates, I don't care how you do it, but basically you tell your basic pitch in the first 2 minutes, you tell your investor pitch, the details in the next 10 minutes, and then you have the rest of the time is to go into details based on the specific interest, the specific questions of the target audience, because every investor is different. Some have a deeper market understanding of some segments. Some have a deeper understanding or, of some technologies or different focus areas. So they will want different levels of information. Okay, I'm just going to pause here, take some questions. Okay, not a question, but a great comment. I'm headed there to buy a Royal Enfield. So another middle-ager like me. The Harley ad, is it not because we already know about Harley? I would work if we were. So yes and no. Okay, so but this is how you entice. No, so I would say it doesn't work because you know Harley. It's positioning Harley as the answer to what you need, right? And the point is it creates that intrigue. It says, it first scratches at itch, right? Because most people in life want to be something, something else, right? They want to be better looking, they want to be smarter, they want to be younger. That's true for most people, right? They're looking for a better life. It just says, hey, with the Harley, you have a better life. No, that's not, that's not about tech products. That's not what we aspire to do. But reality is that's what we are doing on a daily basis, right? If you say, hey, Mr. CXO, you want a better life. You want a better business, right? Let me show you what that better business could look like. And my product will help you get there. Then they will say, okay, tell me more, right? And they will definitely want to know why I can trust your product. That's why if you go back to the template, we had that credibility marker, right? We had, show me your credentials, show me your team, show me your traction, show me, other customers you have, show me proof points that I can trust you, right? But don't lead with those proof points, because those proof points are only required once I've decided I like this product and I might want it. Those proof points are not the reason I'll get the product, right? But I'll need those proof points before I do get that product, which Harley may not need to know, right? So it's great to give that proof point. Okay, I've heard of Harley. I know it's a big company. I don't need more proof, right? They still need to create the desire. In the case of my product, in case of a deep tech product, you need to create the desire. You need to show how your product fulfills it, and you now need to give the proof point. That's the difference between you and Harley. Okay, when pitching to a medical device OEM CXO whose customer is a middle-class patient, who is supposed to be the hero of the pitch? Okay, good question. Now, you've missed out two other stakeholders in this. So in a medical device company, who is the patient? There are actually three other stakeholders involved. There is a doctor who is going to administer that product or prescribe that product in the first place. There is a hospital who is going to, if it requires surgery or installation or something, then a hospital is going to actually provide the facility and the service. And they could be an insurance company, especially if it's in the US market. An insurer will very often decide whether they will pay for this product or not, in which case the sale will only happen if the insurer approves it. So you have to figure out who all are the stakeholders. There's a patient, there's a doctor, there's the healthcare facility, and there is the payer, the insurance company. Who is the hero of the story? Is the key decision maker whose life you're going to change the most. Okay, and I mentioned the key decision maker. So very often, maybe the patient is the one who will benefit, but the doctor is going to make the decision, so you have to influence doctors. In fact, for most medical products, the audience is the doctor, right? In fact, we were having a very interesting conversation, and Anirvan, you're probably there. It's a medical diagnostic solution, and it's like, in that case, make the doctor the hero of the story, because usually it's the doctor who has to feel like, I am empowered by this particular product or technology. You make, so in most cases it's a doctor, but very often it could be the the hospital administrator. Depends on what your solution is doing, whose life it's changing. It could be the payer, it could be the insurance company who is saying, I provide better outcomes at a more managed cost, right? It could very well be the patient. So there are some OTC medication, over-the-counter medications, or there are some medications where, even though it's a prescribed medication, a Viagra is a prime example, where it dramatically changes the life of a patient. There, the hero of the story is the patient, right? So the hero is the one whose life you're going to change the most with your product. Okay, and it depends. And okay, next question is, what did Travis? So I should say Travis say this to oversupply side, his driver. So he'll say, yeah, I'm getting you more business, right? But I'm getting you more business because I'm driving convenience for your customers. So, and this digresses. So especially when you have multiple stakeholders and you have, a two-sided marketplace, And of course, Uber is a classic example of a two-sided marketplace. Very often you get into this complex question of who is the primary audience. I mentioned Airbnb earlier, and that's pretty much true in every two-sided marketplace. What you have to do is pick a primary. The mistake you'll make is if you try to make both primary. So you have to say, I'm serving this audience first, and it need not necessarily be with the one who's paying you, right? In Uber's case, they make the customer, the rider, the primary hero, which doesn't mean they can ignore the driver. They still have to do a lot for the driver, but they say, a driver benefits because first I'm helping and bringing more riders to my platform. Right. So they gave a lot of financial incentives to drivers to come on their platform initially, right? Because they said, I need to have a critical mass to serve my hero. And then they took that away later when they could. But I'll give you another example of a two-sided marketplace, which is not even thought of as a two-sided marketplace usually, where the payer is not the one who's the hero. I'm talking about Google AdSense. In Google advertising, the advertiser pays, right? But the hero is not the advertiser. The hero is the searcher who is your free user, who's a free rider, right? But Google is very clear. They say, I'm here to first serve the needs of the person searching. I want to make sure they get the best results, irrespective of who's paying for the ad, right? I'm going to give them, I'm going to give the high quality results at the top, and then let advertisers come into that queue, provided they are also relevant. By doing that, they're ensuring that the value of their advertising slots remains high, right? So you have to be very clear about in your model, who's the primary who's you're serving, whose life you're changing first. That may not be the one who's paying. Okay. And you still have to take care of your other stakeholders. Absolutely, right? So like Google absolutely takes care of, they do a lot for their sellers. Same thing with an Amazon or with Flipkart. They're very clear. The hero is the customer, not the merchant. Doesn't mean they don't take care of the merchant, but they're very clear. The merchant is there because the customer is there, not the other way around. Any other questions, or I think we can move on? Okay, so we are running out of time very quickly. So I'm going to talk about a few advanced techniques, and I may rush through some stuff here. One very big challenge we get is, I only get 2 minutes, right? I don't have time to tell a story. And sometimes the situation is, a meeting is on your calendar. You walk in, you're thinking you got a half an hour, you got an hour, and the client says, no, get to the point. Or your boss says, sorry, I got to rush into another meeting. Tell me right now. How do you handle this? And I'll give you a trick here. I'll give you a very powerful template to always prepare for the situation. Always prepare for the situation. And have your story ready, 2-minute story ready, okay? Because you always have only 2 minutes. Even if you don't get the situation where somebody says, oh, your boss says, oh, I got to run, tell me real quick what it is. Even if that's not true, well, guess what? If you don't hook them in the first 2 minutes, they will start looking at their mobiles or how many liked their last Facebook post. And I like to say you always have 2 Punjabi minutes. For the Punjabis out in the audience, you would have heard this, right? 2 minutes, 2 minutes. It's 2 fungible minutes. 2 minutes can mean 2 seconds. 2 minutes can mean 2 hours. If you're waiting for somebody and they say, oh, man, I'm reaching in 2 minutes. Means nothing, if the other person is a Punjabi especially. How do you tell your story in 2 minutes? Here's the template, guys. You take it down, it's gold. You start with a 1-line context, and that context should be what is there the trend. So it goes back to the big trend, the big situation, the point number 1 and point number 3 on that questionnaire. Okay, and I'll actually show you examples of how this works. And goal, which is the goal or the quest of your audience, not your goal, not my goal, the goal of your audience. What is your boss or your customer trying to achieve? One line. But, and okay, don't skip these words. You have to use words and goal, but lay out the summary, the core obstacle. But, we need it live in a month. But we only have a limited budget. But this needs a capability that we don't have, right? So lay out the core obstacle to achieving there. Therefore, give your idea, one line idea. Okay, if you do this powerfully enough, your meeting will grow from a half an hour to 2 hours if that's what the customer wants. Because what you're doing is you're getting into touching what exactly your audience wants. You are talking about their needs, their goals, their priorities, right? And you're showing them how to achieve it. They have infinite time for that. What they don't have time for is your priorities. Okay, so they will make time if you do this well. Now, I'll give an example of where I recently used this with a client. Okay, and when I sent, this was over an email, I sent this to a client and I got a response from their CXO. And I shared, an article and I put a paragraph on top. Would you like to see what that article looks like, what that paragraph looks like? And of course, I'll show you. And he actually, the client actually wrote, a great article. And I love the articulation in the last paragraph of your email. And here's what I wrote. It's great if a client acknowledges your mail, and boy, if they praise, right? If they say I like it, it's like when Bond gets that kiss at the end of the movie. So this was the article. Sorry, this was the text. Now notice, I'm getting into. At first glance, it reads like, okay, what's special about this, right? I'm talking about DTA, I'm talking about business models, I'm talking about customer experience, the usual tech stuff, the usual techie shit we talk about. What is different about this? It starts out with the same structure. It starts out with a context, right? Because with this client, we were discussing digital transformation, AI, right? So we're laying out the context, which is important to the client. Okay. And their clients need to understand this. So this is a priority for my client. Okay. So I've touched upon, and notice the structure. It's exactly the same structure. I laid out the proposition, the background, context, and their goal. Okay. But so, but however, no, you can use other words for it, right? The challenge will be, and then I lay out the challenge, right? And therefore, and again, you can use other words. You can so therefore, so, hence, consequently, right? You use the structure, it becomes very, very powerful. So it's the same thoughts, same ideas. And again, you can't get away with weak facts, okay? But if you have strong facts, this structure helps you connect. Structure helps you get and hit home, right? It's the same story principles, okay? Second big challenge you face, and especially as deep techies, we face this on a regular basis. The concepts we deal with are very abstract and very complex. How do you breathe life into those? And I started out, if you remember, with a one paragraph summary of a white paper or summary, or a one paragraph excerpt from a white paper, a big data white paper, and say, this is so abstract, right? So very often you deal with abstract concepts. How do you breathe life into this? Okay, what does it mean to breathe life? You want to make it simple. Let's make sure it's understandable. Let's make sure it's convincing, it's inspiring, right? It's moving. And let's make sure it's remembered. Because I can tell you, even if I understood this first statement, I could not go and repeat it to someone else, right? It doesn't move me to action. It's talking about something really, really powerful. It's saying our data is stereotyped, right? And we all talk about, we understand data bias in AI and the problem it has, but it doesn't, it doesn't compel action. Okay, so if I rephrase this completely, and let me just give you the answer first. An algorithm trained on the in-situ data set mislabeled a man standing in a kitchen as a woman. Our data is gender biased. Now notice, factually, it's the same as the first one, right? In fact, the first one is a little more general and abstract. This one gets a little more specific. It only talks about gender bias. But boy, does it hit home. You say, there is a problem, boy. If just because a man is standing in a kitchen and AI will say this is a woman, we have a problem. We have a serious problem that needs to be fixed. Okay? It's inspiring. It's something which says, gee, we need to act. Is it memorable? If I asked you this a week later, would you remember it? I bet you will, right? You will not forget this one easily. So the question is, it's very clear that the story representation of the same concept is far more powerful than the original abstract. So the question is, how do I get from A to B, right? And there are really 3 steps it takes to go from A to C. 3 simple steps. First, just describe the concept. In this case, I just copy pasted, but if you have an abstract concept, just describe it. Put it down on a piece of paper. Just put it, make it explicit, because it should not be, yeah, I understand it, it's in my head and I ramble when I try to explain it. No, put it down. Second thing is, talk about what it means. What is the outcome or implication? So the way you do that is ask a so what. So when I say, look, there is bias in our data, right? So what? So it means it will mislabel certain stereotyped, certain stereotype people or segments, right? So, that could be racial stereotyping, age stereotyping, gender stereotyping, right? So you say, well, what does it mean? Okay, so which means it will amplify stereotypes. It will mislabel people, right? So that's how, what does it do? Okay, then you talk about, well, what is the big impact for one specific person? So narrow it down to one person, not the abstract general case, and talk about a big impact. So I could say, well, it could take, so I could say, for example, it could take, somebody who's of a certain race and, will be thrice as likely to label them as somebody with a criminal record. That's powerful, right? It could put more, right? So you keep asking, so what? And keep going into a bigger impact and for a more specific person. So it could say, it could put more African Americans in jail. Oh boy, right? It could deny more women opportunities in the workspace, right? So it could reduce the income opportunity for a woman by 20%. So I'm saying, you will come up with multiple such statements. Pick one of them, right? Pick one of them and just highlight that. That is a great way to make it vivid, personal, and emotional. Remember, there are these 3 aspects. It needs to be vivid, which means it needs to be more tangible, more specific. It needs to be personal. It needs to be about one person, right? One person is inspirational. A story is always about one person. Many is a crowd or a statistic, and it needs to be emotional. It talks about the implication on their lives, not about some statistic, right? So that's how you make it vivid, personal, more impactful. Okay, and this is something you can practice every day, guys. This is a core takeaway from here. The converse of this, a very basic blunder that you're probably making and you can start avoiding right now, is you start, when you're pitching, you're talking about your company, your product, you're talking about your product names. I see this so many times. People talk about, here's my product suite. I have this product, this product, this product. This product is for small customers. This product is my enterprise version. This product does this. This product does that. Guys, I'm not interested. Not interested. Tell me about what your technology, your solution does for me, right? That's what we've talked about for the last 3 hours. If I'm interested, I will talk about, I'll ask you which product works for me. Don't bore me don't try to educate me about your products. And sorry guys, I see this happen so often. Just cut this out, please. It's a blunder. Okay, so let me end with this. And I don't think we have time. So yeah, I had a great clip by Amir Khan. And Rakesh, let me just ask you, do we have questions, or can we take 5 minutes, play this clip? Or we can take 10 minutes, or we can let the session run in an extra 10 minutes?
We could, we just have one more question remaining, but I think
okay, so let me do this. I'll just run this video. In the meantime, please type in any questions. I'll be here for an extra 10-15 minutes to answer questions. Great clip, fantastic. Amir Khan talking about storytelling, and you will see how a lot of the concepts we'll talk about make sense here. Enjoy.
So Satyamev Jayate is a television show that we did, in which we picked up a lot of social issues and researched as best as we could and then shared that with people. So all of what we were sharing on the show was all factual. However, it was a combination of very hard journalism and storytelling. And because I've always believed that I don't want to convince a person intellectually. I want to touch the person's heart. I want to change how you feel internally about something. I want to touch you, in very, on a gut level. So I'll give an example. The first episode we did was on female feticide. Now, when I start the show, I don't say that, welcome for the first episode and today we're going to talk about female feticide. I don't do that. Because I'm willing to bet that the moment I say today we're going to talk about female feticide, that's when you'll put the TV off. So instead, I start by saying that, I often ask people, who's the most important person in your life? And usually people say, it's my mother. And there's a good reason for that. And then I speak about motherhood and how each one of us is so deeply and strongly connected with our mother. I talk about my own mother. And I bring you into this emotional state where you're also thinking about your own mother and how important it is to you. And then I say that, but how are we treating our mothers today? Let's take a look, let's meet a mother. And we meet our first guest of the show, who's a lady who's been through 6 abortions in 8 years. Now, I'm not calling her a Mahila. I'm calling her a mother. So the way you see her will change dramatically. I've brought you emotionally into that stage where you think about your own mother. So this is the storytelling part of it. Is the facts of her story accurate? Yes, totally. But I've prepared you emotionally to receive it in a different way. So you're now engaged in watching what is happening to a mother. And therefore you're reacting like that. When we, and often our audience, there was a live audience in our show, they never knew what the topic was. So I remember one of our topics was domestic violence. And our audience was all male. And I started the show by saying that, today we have all males in the audience. These are the bodyguards of society, the people who look after us and all. So they were quite thrilled. They didn't know what was coming. And then I said, where do you think our women are most unsafe in society? So each one of them gave me their opinion. They said, at night, रात को सुनसान गली में they are not safe. Sometimes in public transport they get teased, etc., etc. So they give different examples of where women are not safe. And I said, even I thought that. Even I thought that. And I have not exposed the topic yet. I said, but how do you find out? So I told my team, go to the nearest hospital and see the women coming in, because a woman who's injured will go to a police station and to a hospital. Police station, she may or may not go. She might not go. Some women are hesitant to go. But hospital, she will go to get herself fixed. So go to the hospital and find out why women have come with injuries. What are the injuries? What is the source of those injuries? And then we discovered in Baba Hospital, which is in Bandra, in a city like Mumbai, which is supposed to be one of the safer cities in India, in Bandra, whereas in the show I had said, जहाँ दिलवाले भी रहता है और bodyguard भी रहता है और रंगीला भी रहता है. The three Khans all stay in Bandra. So उस hospital में हम जब गए तो पता लगा कि more than 50 to 60% of the women who were there had come because they were beaten up at home. And so I sum up that entire introduction, which is about 15-20 minutes, in which I say that, so our women in our society may or may not be injured in a lonely road or in a bus stop or in a train, but 50% के ऊपर chances है कि घर पे पिटने वाले हैं. That's when the topic locks in. But there is a drama to that storytelling, and then you're sitting and you want to know more.
So amazing one, right? A real genius at play. And notice, so I'm just going to highlight the 4 things I take away from this. First is, as he starts out, he says, the facts have to be on my side, right? Which is, I get the facts, the journalism, the hard data, that has to be correct. But I add storytelling to it. Second thing is, he talks about, I want to get your heart, your gut. I don't want to convince you intellectually. I want to touch your heart, right? That's what we need to do with storytelling. The third thing is, he says, I want to bring the audience into the right emotional stage so that they're prepared for the facts, right? You have to create that emotional reaction. You have to get the audience in the right emotional state, or your proposition will not be accepted. The fourth thing he says, he creates the need for solutions first. So he talks about, he ends with, now the audience wants to know more. Now they want to discuss, right? So if he had started the show with, we're talking about women's safety and here's how we can ensure it, people will put the TV off. But you have to create the need. You have to, and that's what we've talked about all along, right? That's what storytelling is. You have to create the need by taking that situation which they know, they understand, highlighting their goals, right? Nobody wants these problems there in society, right? But you have to connect it to their goals, and you have to bring out the challenges and then say, okay, you've accepted this, now let's talk about the solution. If you start talking about the solution too soon, doesn't matter how good, powerful it is, we'll lose it, right? So it's exactly what we've talked about. The difference is, this is a genius who's doing it instinctively. You and I are, tech people, and we need the process, we need the structure we've gone through, right? But now the fantastic news is, you all have the tools, right? You've gone through the tech stack, you've gone through the process, right? The architecture, you've gone through the exercise, you've got the design patterns, you have the power to do it. Okay? So guys, go create fantastic stories, and I'll take next few minutes, I'll take any questions you may have. Okay, there's one question here. In the MC2 example, the ability to visualize a problem helps understand the issue. Is this ability critical to good storytelling? Okay, so the question is really when the in the MC2 example, it was that you could visualize the man and the woman or the man in the kitchen, and is that critical? Yes. Okay, and I say in storytelling, there are really there are really three levels. Okay, there is the okay, so let me just talk about the last two levels. So there is the I see. So you know, if you look at language, if you talk to somebody about a concept, right, and they understand, what will they say? I get it, right? If they really understood it, they would say I see, right? Visual is far more powerful than verbal or data, right? So yes, absolutely. In stories, you're trying to get to that imagery. That's far more powerful. But there is a level above that also. And that level is emotion, right? If somebody says, I feel it, right? So if you map it to the body parts, right? The visualization reaches the eye, which is far more better than the logical part. But even stronger than that is the heart and is the gut. Okay, so gut is when you simplify it so much that it's like a gut punch, and the when you add a lot of emotion, it touches the heart, right? So in the in situ example, we also added an emotional layer, right? That's what you try to do in stories. So stories are about visualization, simplification, and emotions, right? It's about the eye, the heart, and the gut, not just the brain. Okay, we don't have any other questions. So with that, guys, thank you very much. I shared my email earlier. I'd love to hear from you. I can also be found on LinkedIn. I hope you found this useful, but more importantly, I hope you will go create your stories with the tools that you've taken out of it. Okay, good luck and thank you. Rakesh, back to you.
Thanks a lot, Subinder. I'll just share the screen now just to show the where the recording will be uploaded, and we wanted to share the feedback link as well. Hopefully I'll just get the link so that I could send it across in Zoom itself. So I mean, all the recordings of all the webinars will be uploaded on our on SINE IIT Bombay's YouTube page. You can look it up on YouTube by searching SINE IIT Bombay. Please subscribe to our channel. And this was last week's webinar. Even Subinder's this particular webinar will be uploaded here. That's it from my side. I was hoping to get the link for the feedback, but we will share that to you if you have registered for it. But if you haven't, do drop us your feedback at sine@sineitb.org. Thank you so much for your participation, guys. And Subinder, thank you so much. It was very insightful.
Pleasure. Thank you.
Yeah, the feedback has already come up on the chats, as you can read them. We really appreciate your time during this day, the 3 hours in the morning for us. Thank you so much, and all the best, all the entrepreneurs in the group, and look forward to hearing from you.
So, sorry, just one thing, Rakesh, I saw a message. Somebody was asking for my email. I'm just going to pop it here. I'm putting it on chat, guys, whoever was looking for the email. Thank you.